Good evening and welcome to the news at 10. 6 Arab foreign ministers will meet in Amman tomorrow to look into progress made in response to the U.S. decision to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. In addition to Minister of Foreign Affairs and Expatriates Ayman Safadi, the top diplomats of Egypt, Palestine, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Morocco are expected to attend the meeting, along with Secretary General of the Arab League. The officials are members of a ministerial delegation formed by the Arab League during its emergency meeting in December to follow up on joint Arab action designed to counter the U.S. move. The ministers will look into the consequences of the U.S. decision and pan-Arab efforts to preserve Jerusalem's Arab character and its historic and legal status. French President Emmanuel Macron and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan met in Paris during Erdogan's trip to Europe to warm up ties with the EU, which have been strained since Turkey's 2016 coup attempt. Regional issues like ongoing efforts to find a political settlement to the Syrian civil war and the U.S. move to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel were discussed, as well as anti-terror cooperation. The two leaders also discussed Turkey's accession process to the European Union, whereby Macron was careful to avoid making encouraging statements, saying a new formulation needs to be created to redefine Ankara-Brussels ties. Russia and the United States headed for a clash at the UN Security Council over a meeting called by Washington to discuss the wave of protests in Iran. U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley has warned the demonstrations could escalate into full-blown conflict, drawing a comparison with Syria. But Russia accused the U.S. of interfering in Iran's national affairs and called for closed-door talks just before the Council's meeting. In Moscow, Russia's deputy foreign minister made it clear that the protests in Iran did not pose an international threat and should not be a topic for debate within the Council. The Russian Foreign Ministry called on Washington not to spoil the opportunity for dialogue between Seoul and Pyongyang. This came after North and South Korea agreed to hold official talks next week, the first in more than 2 years. This report has more.
North and South Korea set to talk for the first time in 2 years. Pyongyang agreed to Seoul's offer for dialogue Friday, only hours after the U.S. and the South delayed a joint military exercise that was set for next month. The North gave its consent for the talks to be held next Tuesday at the border truce village called Panmunjom.
As far as what's on the agenda, we'll both discuss the Pyongyang Winter Olympics and ways to improve ties between South and North Korea.
President Donald Trump and South Korean leader Moon Jae-in said late Thursday that annual large-scale military drills typically held in the spring will now take place after the Winter Games. What hasn't changed anyone's stance on the North's nuclear weapons. Kim Jong-un announced earlier this week in a New Year's Day speech his country will now focus on mass-producing missiles for deployment. Trump, for his part, said Thursday the talks were a good thing, and Seoul officials say he'll send a high-level delegation, including members of his family, to the Olympics. He also took credit for any dialogue between the two sides, tweeting, "Does anybody really believe that talks and dialogues would be going on if I wasn't firm, strong, and willing to commit our total might against the North?"
To the United States, where the northeast coast is facing freezing sub-zero temperatures, having been battered by heavy snowstorms as a bomb cyclone wreaked havoc from the Atlantic. The harsh winter weather has led to widespread travel chaos as airports, roads, and schools were forced to close across the country. The storm has brought with it up to 40 centimeters of snow in some places and claimed the lives of at least 11 people so far. Meteorologists have put the recent extreme conditions down to a weather phenomenon known as bombogenesis, also known as a bomb cyclone or a weather bomb. Bombogenesis is the term used to describe a low-pressure system whose central pressure falls 24 millibars in just 24 hours. A controversial book on the Trump administration went on sale today despite attempts to block its publishing. Michael Wolff's A Fire and Fury Inside the Trump White House had its release pulled forward after published excerpts this week set off a political firestorm, threats by Donald Trump lawyers of legal action, and an effort to halt publication. Customers in Washington, New York City and London braved below freezing temperatures to line up at bookstores to purchase their copy. The book, dismissed by Trump as full of lies, depicts a chaotic White House, a president who was ill-prepared to win the office in 2016, and Trump aides who scorned his abilities. In an interview with NBC, the author said he stood by his reporting and had talked to the president for the book.
I absolutely spoke to the president. Whether he realized it was an interview or not, I don't know, but it certainly was not off the record.
What are some of the ways the president was described to you by those closest to him?
You know, I will tell you the one description that everyone gave, everyone has in common. They all say he is like a child. And what they mean by that is he has a need for immediate gratification. It's all about him.
And as of this morning, Fire and Fury was the top-selling book on Amazon.com and flew off the shelves. A 405-kilogram bluefin tuna has been sold for $320,000 in what may be Tsukiji Market's last auction at its current site in downtown Tokyo. Tuna is prized around the world for its use in sushi, but experts warn growing demand has made it an endangered species. The 80-year-old Tsukiji fish market is the world's largest and a major tourist magnet for the Japanese capital. It is due to relocate later in the year as a result of plans to build a road for the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. To sports, and the Brisbane international Nick Kyrgios turned on the style in time to beat Ukraine's Alexander Dolgopolov and set up a semi-final against top seed and holder Grigor Dimitrov. The Australian huffed and puffed in a miserable first set, but eventually found some rhythm to come through a tricky encounter 1-6, 6-3, 6-4. Bulgarian Dimitrov also had to battle hard against Britain's Kyle Edmund. Dimitrov was in control against Edmund, winning 6-3, 6-7, 6-4 in 2 hours and 23 minutes. And finally, for a quick look at the weather. The cold air mass, accompanied by a depression centered over Cyprus affecting the kingdom, brought heavy rain and strong winds of up to 85 kilometers per hour in some parts of the country. As of this evening, Amman Mayor Youssef Shawarbi said the situation in the streets of the capital was under control, adding that a drainage system was ready to manage and discharge rainwater. As for tomorrow, a slight rise in temperature is expected, though it will remain cold and cloudy with a chance for more rain. Amman can expect a high of 9 degrees Celsius, dropping down to 4, while in the Gulf of Aqaba, fair conditions prevail with mercury levels at 19 degrees, sliding down to 8 at night. With rain and high winds expected to continue, the Greater Amman Municipality and the Civil Defense Department advise citizens to call on 06-535-9971 or 06-535-9970 for any weather-related emergencies. And with this, we come to the end of this edition of the news. I'm Alia Tuqan. Thank you for joining us. Stay warm, stay safe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.